Well, hi everyone, and thanks to Jennifer and the City of Davis for putting these workshops together. I know it's something that we're all really excited about because we're, going into this additional year of drought and we want to do something positive. And so when Jennifer asked me to talk about lawn conversions, I thought, well, I know a little bit of something about that. And what I've found is that I've learned a lot more. So, and there may be some of you in the audience that know as much or more as I do. So hopefully when we get to the question and answers, we can all be sharing information together. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I probably will go through the presentation, and if you have a burning issue that can't wait, you can let me know, but I think it might be good if we wait until the end for questions, if that's okay with everyone, especially with such a large crowd. It's a little intimidating, so be nice to me. So we're going to talk about lawn conversion. A lot of the water workshop topics are related to this, and so we'll be touching on some of the other topics. The last one I know many of you came to was about rainwater harvesting and rain barrels, which is another really fascinating topic. And this one we'll be talking about all of us who have lawns, what we can do about them. So I'm Kerry Daane Loux. I am a longtime Davis resident, went to school at UC Davis in the landscape architecture program, went away for a little while and came back and raised my family here. And so I'm a real sort of advocate for Davis and UC Davis and the City of Davis. And it's really exciting for me now to be working at the City of Davis in the Parks Department as a park planner. And we have an awful lot of exciting things going on. As you know, we hadn't had development for a while, and now we've got some new parks coming online. And so that's what I'm doing for the city, is working with them to make sure that our parks and amenities address the needs of what the residents of the City of Davis need and want. So, and I did put some cards back there along with Jennifer's cards. So you're welcome to contact me if you have any questions. So talking about lawn conversion, these are the topics that I'd like to address today, just kind of beginning to think about what lawn conversion is and why would people want to remove their lawns. And I believe I'll kind of be preaching to the choir here a little bit, because I think all of you are here because you want to hear about that. But as a landscape architect and a designer, I can't help but start at the beginning and think about the analysis of why we do what we do and that kind of thing. So we'll talk about that for a bit. How do you plan your project? And I'm not going to get into a lot of detailed information about the design and all the steps you would go through with site analysis and master planning. There's a lot of online resources for that. I'd really like to kind of focus on the techniques of actually converting your lawn. And so we'll touch on some of that planning process, but then move right into techniques and tips for lawn conversion. And then at the end, again, I can't help myself. I've got some pretty photos and some ideas about things you want to think about, because it's not just about getting rid of your lawn. It's once your lawn is gone, what do you want to do with those spaces? So there's a lot of considerations, and maybe it'll generate some ideas and some questions and some thinking about where you want to go next. So does that sound like a good overview? Are there any concerns or questions before we get started? For permitting, as far as I know, there is no permitting for removing your lawn in Davis. I know there are other communities that have had some issues with that. But at this point, and to my knowledge, you can remove your lawn. I think that there is a... Jennifer, do you have any information on that?
Permitting is required.
Permitting required in order to remove your lawn. I don't think there is, yeah. Thanks for that question, that's a good one. So Jennifer already went over that we're all we're having imposed upon us, both by mandate and by choice, to reduce our water use, and she talked a bit about what some of the guidelines in Davis are. It's all based on the governor's mandate setting the standards from 2013 based on the rates that we used in 2013. And every community in the state has slightly different requirements based on their water use. So I'm not going to get too much into that, but we all know that the cost of water is going up, and the amount of water that's coming down is going down. So we need to try to do what we can to reduce our water use, and landscapes are a really great way to do that. So, and I think that what we can try to do as we go through this presentation is think of it as a win-win, because, you know, we're sort of tied to our lawns, but maybe there are some options that will allow us to do something that we can enjoy more, create less work, and have it be more beautiful and something that creates some healthy living. So that's what I'm hoping we can all look at this as this is our opportunity to do something. Having said that, clearly there are good uses for lawn, and there are some lawns that are okay to have. So in a community setting, for community gathering, or even in your own landscape, there may be some places where you want some active use of lawns, and it makes sense to have some patches of lawn. But I think that most of us with traditional landscapes have more lawn than we really need or can actively use, and that's what we want to focus on. Certainly within cities and parks, you need some turf for active play and other types of things. But the City of Davis is working very hard to address reducing turf where there is no active use. And there are things like median strips where you can't really play there, or other places where there is lawn that can't really be managed as an active use area. And then, of course, there are lawn alternatives, including types of turf grass and native grasses and bunch grasses and things. So it's not like we have to just completely eliminate lawns from our lives, but we can have the right choices of lawns in the right places, low and no-mow alternatives, and using appropriate lawn maintenance options to make sure that we're not applying excessive water. Things like leaving your lawn a little bit longer, even a mowed lawn, helps reduce water usage, because the longer your lawn is, the less water you're having to apply to it. Very short cropped lawns are using more water. So from my point of view, we want to be careful about what lawns we have, but it's not just a matter of no lawns anywhere. But certainly not necessarily do we need them in our landscapes, because there are so many other options that we can think about. And many of us may need to phase these ideas. I mean, we can't just go in wholesale and take everything out, but we can focus on the most important areas. Maybe you start with your front yard, because you're not really out there sitting and enjoying the lawn in the front yard in the same way perhaps that in your private spaces. So I think we all need to kind of address what we have in our landscapes and think about where we can have better alternatives than lawn. So some of the reasons to remove your lawn, and again, I think you guys have come to some of these ideas yourselves, but really there is beauty in the new landscape aesthetic. I think that there was a long time that lawns were the part of the American home, the American dream, having your big open space. It was lush and green and looked beautiful, and it kind of went along with that whole ethic of your house and your lawn and going out and mowing, you know, every weekend, and it was kind of like part of a whole component. But I think that people really are now beginning to enjoy the beauty of other types of spaces that are not necessarily lawn, and they may not be always lush and green, but you can certainly have some beautiful landscapes that are not lawn. And of course, many of us have very strong sustainability and environmental beliefs, and so some of those include water use reduction, which is why we're here, and putting in drought-tolerant type landscapes, which can be both plants and other materials that you use in your landscape. And by the way, I think Jennifer mentioned this, she is going to be providing this PowerPoint show to you, so you'll be able to access that once we get that up online. It might be a few days, but if you signed in with your email address, you should be getting notice that you'll be able to look through this website. Other purposes that relate to the environment and eco-friendly landscapes are that different types of landscapes can definitely be lower maintenance and more user-friendly maintenance, in that you're exercising and you're doing other things than just with a mower. Although I know there's a lot of people that love to go out and mow their lawn, but low maintenance, cost-effective landscapes, and also less resource use. So you're not as likely to be putting the fertilizers and the herbicides on. You're not using gas or electric powered mowers to take care of your lawn. In many landscapes, you can be putting the resources from the garden back into the garden with composting or other things. So you can really get closer to a zero waste gardening with other types of landscapes. And then, of course, there's the opportunity to have natives, to have beneficials and pollinators for beneficial insects, grasses, wildflowers. And many people like to turn their lawn into an area where they can be providing food and integrate that into the landscape. So you might have your food plants mixed in with your flower plants or different things like that. And all of these things really are part of the new aesthetic and how people are looking at their landscapes in different ways. And finally, as I mentioned before, the habitat enhancement and creating healthier living spaces for all of us. And I'm just going to go through some pictures of some of these things. The beauty of the new landscape aesthetic and using a lot of natives and flowering perennials and lots of texture, and this is all to convince you to do something that you already want to do, so forgive me. So beginning to embrace the new opportunities and styles, shapes, and colors in our residential landscapes, which are seasonal, and sometimes during the season there might not be as much as that, and other times there's more, but we can really complement that with some of the other components, like our art and our entryways and our house colors and that kind of thing. So of some of the things that I have mentioned a bit, but the sustainability and environmental beliefs go beyond just our own landscape and really impact climate change. Nationally, the use of oils and energy to maintain our lawns is really astronomical. And a friend of mine wrote a really wonderful book that I highly recommend, and I did use some of the resources from this book. And there's lots of other books as well, but she talks a lot about what that ethic of lawns has meant for us nationally and worldwide, and some of the facts and figures about the equivalence of what we use, what the impact of having lawns is. And so you can access this online as well as get the book. But the other thing about this book is that it's really great for design ideas and also being a do-it-yourself landscape designer. And she includes things like graph paper and ideas for where to start and what elements to address when you think about your design, and go into much more detail than I'm going to today. I have some other books up here that I might mention as I go through, because there really are so many resources that you can use, and sometimes it's hard to know where to start. And so it's nice to have some beginnings, and all of us can use the web and stuff, but just if you want to peruse some of these books, there's books about plants and some of the other information. Getting rid of your lawn can be called green gardening, which does avoid the chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, and the other things. The energy consumption that I was just talking about, that is used for maintenance based on mowing, watering, and fertilizing and other lawn maintenance techniques. And the other thing about different types of planting is that you really are investing in the environment by building healthy soil, because grass, when it comes right down to it, is a monoculture. And we all know that monocultures do not support the variety of organisms and other components of the soil and the air and the rest of our environment that other plants can do. So by getting rid of our lawns in the right places and the right times, we can support an eco-friendly landscape and management. So that kind of design can look really great, have lots of texture and color. Drought-tolerant plantings offer a lot of different variety. And another really important component along with the planting is to keep your landscapes mulched, because that helps with water evapotranspiration, and it helps not have to water your plants as much because the water is staying in the soil. It looks nice, I mean, and it keeps the weeds down. So there's a lot of really good beneficial components to having mulch in your landscape. We talked about natives, grasses, wildflowers, and growing vegetables. Whether it's in a planter bed that's really kind of dedicated to the vegetables and fruits, or whether it's mixed in with, perennials and herbs and edible plants. And I think that we've all seen a lot more in the last dozen to more years, 15 years, of people having their edible landscapes right in their front yards. And so this is what I really see as the changing dynamic of what people see as beautiful and acceptable to have out in their front yards as well as in their backyards. So, and then of course, I think most of us love to see all the different types of native bees that we get in Davis. I don't know what the actual number is. Probably someone here, Steve or someone, knows it's like 60 some plus or more types of native bees, and many different types of butterflies, some of which are specific to a single plant, and others are more generic, and birds and all the rest of the parts of the habitat, including things like earthworms. And that was one of the things that I found really interesting in Sarah's book, is that she talked about, she's done for many years a test of the ecology of her, she's also a landscape architect, the ecology of her clients' homes by digging a hole in the ground and getting the dirt out in like a 12 by 12 by a certain depth area and counting how many earthworms are in there. And she said that in many of the landscapes that she does, that it's very rare to find even a few, but that healthy soil is going to be rich and loose and moist and support the creatures that help keep it that way. So, okay, so now I've convinced you, right? You all want to go out and convert your lawns. So, what are the steps that we all need to take, including me? I've kind of stopped watering my lawn, but it's still there. So I'm right in the same boat as you guys. So it was really nice for me to learn a little bit more about the techniques. So how do we say so long to our lawn? It really does make sense to start with some sort of a plan or an approach, or if you want to call it a master plan that can include the design of what you want to create in addition to what you want to get rid of. You need to think about your own preferences and how you would use your garden, and how how much maintenance do you want to do? How much time do you want to be outside? Do you want to, have someone else do that, or do you want it to be you? Maybe you want to spend 20 hours a week in your garden, and maybe if it's 2 hours, that's too much. Those are things you need to ask yourself. And with the actual project itself, you need to think about your schedule, what the timing is, what are some of the factors that are pushing you to do it, and when can you make it work, what your budget is. There's usually a range of budget that you can apply with different ways of implementing your design ideas. You can go high end or low end and get to the same goal with size of plant materials that you use and other types of materials. And I would really encourage you, as we're looking at some of this information about lawn conversion, to think about the phasing of what you're going to do, because I think we're at a really good time right now where we can think about how to get rid of the lawns now when we're coming into a summer full of drought, and looking ahead to doing some planting and some other implementation of different design ideas in the fall when we hopefully will be getting some more moisture. So that's kind of like an overview of what could really work. So you can put in the infrastructure, but maybe get the lawn out, get the soil really improving, and think about later on putting in some plants. So it may not be what everybody wants to do, but it is an approach. What we're going to talk about is it is also possible to do some planting right away, and that is not a bad approach. But you just kind of need to think about what works for you and how what your goals and ideals are. But one thing that's really important is what else is going to stay there. So some of us have big trees in our yards, and we need to make sure that while we're getting rid of our turf, we're not also killing our trees. So we need to be deep watering and thinking about that. Maybe the trees are creating some pretty dense shade for us, so the worry about planting now is not such a significant worry. It's more like, how do I get drought-tolerant planting in that loves shade? So each garden and each situation and each individual really presents different goals and ideas for how you're going to approach this. You may want to work with a designer, or you may want to use some of the tools available and do it yourself, and that really is a personal choice as well. So there are many resources online. I've gone to some of them. This one right here is the front of the book that I was talking about that Sarah wrote. There's a lot of Sunset Western Garden Book resources. The Easy Water-Wise Gardening is a good one, and just the Sunset Western Garden Book itself. There's a whole lot of websites that are available, and some of the ones that I used were the UC Davis Arboretum, and I brought some brochures for you. If you didn't get a chance to pick one up and want one, this is a great, these are the Arboretum All-Stars, which are plants which are really identified for the Central Valley. And so it's kind of a good resource to have, and they're now becoming more and more available in nurseries in this area. I went to some of the areas that have similar climates to us, like the East Bay Mud website, which has some good information, the State Water Board, bayfriendlyorg.org. So there were a lot of different resources that I found that are really helpful, but sometimes it's hard to know where to go first, So hopefully, as we talk about this, we'll have some clearer ideas about where to go. So I have to confess that as I was researching this, I knew a fair amount about different lawn removal techniques, but I was not a convert until after researching for this class. So I've become a convert to the idea of sheet mulching, and many of you have probably already heard about that, but it is a way of getting rid of your lawn, suppressing weeds in the lawn area at the same time as building more fertile soil, because you're actually using the turf as part of the area that is going to be biodegradable compost by using the sheet mulching method. And the overview is that you put down something, typically cardboard, but there's a lot of other sheet mulching material that you can use, and you overlap it and lay it down, and then you cover that up with other materials, which can be a combination of or a single use of soil and or amendments and mulch or straw or all sorts of different things. And the idea is, it's sometimes I've found on the website called the lasagna method, because you're basically layering, kind of the cardboard is the noodles, and then you get the cheese, and then you get some sauce, and you're creating some layering in your garden that is then going to decompose and keep out the weeds and kill the turf by getting rid of any access to air and light, at the same time as enhancing the composting of the turf that's under there. It can take several months for that to be as effective as it can be. You can plant right away with that if you dig down through the cardboard. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here because you'll see I'll get to some slides where it's like, okay, been there, done that. But I do find that especially for residential applications that the sheet mulching is a really great way to go. And you can combine that with some other methods. Another method that my mom used was she had her gardener get a sod cutter and went through and cut the top of the sod off. Which you could either then just take that away and plant right on that, but what she did is she was worried that her grass had some Bermuda in it and that kind of stuff, and said that it wasn't going to work to sheet mulch it. So she turned the sod pieces over and then sheet mulched. So she had so there's a lot of different ways that you can combine the different methods to be the one that seems to work the best for you. But the sod cutting really does kind of like cut that existing turf off at the roots, and if you turn it over, then that's an additional bit of surety that the grass isn't going to grow back. And then the depriving turf of water and light, there's other means of getting rid of turf and weeds like solarization, which is putting down plastic and having it in the really hot sun, and that will basically burn up the turf, or herbicides or other ways. But most of these things I think really can come back to either being used with sheet mulching, or there's various ways of sheet mulching, so you can kind of combine these different techniques. And I know a lot of us don't want to use herbicides. There are some situations where you've just got a really invasive weed, or you've tried really hard to get rid of it, and maybe just hitting it once with something is a way to go. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it's, it speeds up the process. So, and I'm going to show you an example where the university wanted to get rid of the turf, and so they felt that it was safe and reasonable to use some herbicide first, and then get to a really beautiful landscape. So as an overview, are there any questions about that? Because we're going to go into some more specifics about these different techniques. Yeah.
On the lawn, sometimes there's that plastic netting.
Uh-huh.
Will that be easy to remove?
Well, the plastic netting is probably not biodegradable, so it's probably still going to be there. But when you're doing the sheet mulching, if that's the way you decide to go, you're layering up, so you're going to, and as it composts, it's going to compress and compact. But I think what would happen is that since the netting is not going to stop moisture or plant roots or anything else, you can just leave it there, and as you continue to work in your garden, you'll start to break it up more. And it might be kind of, but if that is something that, you just don't really want that there, that may be a case where you want to do some sod cutting and use that in a compost pile somewhere else and start with the grade that's underneath the netting. So, but yeah, I think that is made to not decompose, and that's why you find it even though it's been a long time since you had sod in there. Yeah? Well, those regulations are changing. They're looking at some different... Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't repeat the question. It was, okay, so this question was, I apologize, I was trying to remember to do that. But this question was, are there limitations for the city of Davis of what you put out on the street for pickup in the composting that we get the leaves and things picked up? And I don't know the full answer to that. Jennifer does.
Yes, currently, if you have a very small amount of the sod, it's okay technically to put it in the street. It will be collected. We don't like to see large amounts, especially if it has a lot of dirt. We ask that people shake the dirt off on your property. You really should be keeping that topsoil on your property. You don't want to be getting rid of it. Dry it out, shake off the topsoil onto your property, then take the grass and roots and put it in the street for pickup. If you remove your entire lawn and you have a lot of the sod to get rid of, you're going to have to order a waste bin from Davis Waste Removal to have it hauled away, or bring it yourself to the landfill. We can't have large quantities of dirt in the street for stormwater purposes, for stormwater pollution prevention purposes, but also because when the trucks go to the landfill, the green waste facility doesn't allow that much dirt to come through for composting. So if you have a large amount, you're going to have to haul it to the landfill yourself, or order a bin from Davis Waste Removal to have it go.
And dirt's a lot heavier than other landscape materials that you might be composting or recycling, so that's part of the problem. Were there any other questions that were asked that I didn't repeat, that someone couldn't hear what the question was? Okay. So some of these slides about sheet mulching are from Stacy Parker at the Arboretum, who did sort of a demo with her own garden and experimented with sheet mulching. And some of them are from my mom's yard in the Bay Area. And some of them are just off the website. But it's kind of a composite of how the sheet mulching works. So, what she says is, say goodbye to your lawn with cardboard. Learn more at the UC Davis Arboretum website. So sheet mulching can use lots of different materials, as I said before, and the typical sheet mulching is cardboard and then possibly some soil and then mulch on top. But you can simplify it down to just cardboard and mulch, or you can add more other things, or you can use newspaper or things like natural products like cotton sheets or wool carpet. So there's a lot of different ways you can go, but the easiest and way to get a lot of material is the cardboard with the mulch on top. So we're going to talk a little bit more about sheet mulching and how to do it. So some of the advantages of sheet mulching is that you can also do some of this with bin composting, but you gather up the material, you take it to the bin, you spin it in the bin, you do whatever kind of bin composting you use, and then you need to take it somewhere else. And what happens with the sheet mulching is that you've got all the material right where it's going to end up, and it's going to be composting in the ground. If you've ever been to one of Jennifer's composting classes, it's a little bit more like the digging in method, except that you don't have to dig anything in because the green material is right there as your lawn. So, and because of the cardboard combined with the soil and mulch on top of it, it's pretty good at suppressing weeds because of that layering or lasagna effect, eliminating the air and light that comes in. But that thickness is what the key to it is. You know, if you're just going to put down some cardboard and kind of a thin layer of mulch, you're going to get a lot of weeds that will pop up through that. So the idea is to use what you can to get that cover to be as thick as you can get it. Which may mound up your landscape a little bit, but again, it will compact. And of course, the huge advantage is you don't have to do anything with that lawn. You don't have to worry about putting it on the street. You don't have to worry about taking it somewhere else or paying to take it to the dump, because it just stays exactly where it is. And I know Steve Nyholm is here. I think it really kind of fits in with the permaculture principles and techniques to do the sheet composting. And then you end up with, rather than the monoculture, not such great soil, although sometimes the soil under lawns can be okay, but you end up with a very rich, diverse, full of life soil by the time everything has composted. And after 3 to 6 months, you're not going to find cardboard or turf or anything else. It's just going to be a real friable, nice soil. Yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, it seems like you'd be covering up like your existing sprinkler system, like if you wanted to later tap into your irrigation system for a swim or something like that. It seemed like you're just
Well, the sprinklers that are along the edges, you'd just kind of like come down to where those are. But ones that are out in the middle, You're probably going to be changing your irrigation system a bit anyway, because you're not going to have lawn. You're going to be having shrubs or succulents or grasses or a different kind of seeded mixture or planting, and you're going to need a slightly different type of irrigation system. I know one of the next talks that come up is going to be about irrigation. You may end up wanting to do a drip system. You may end up wanting to do a different kind of irrigation. But if you did want to use the irrigation that was there, you could put the existing heads on risers and get them up a little higher. And you can probably adjust your sheet mulching at the edges so that those other ones at the edges are just going to stay there. So, it's something that needs to be part of your planning process. Once you decide what you want to do and how you're going to do it, your existing irrigation is going to have to be part of that planning. So, and that may be a reason that you either want to learn more about the irrigation yourself or work with a consultant to help you with that piece of it. Yeah?
Can you sheet mulch if your thatch is higher than your concrete?
If your thatch is higher than your concrete? Well, it's just a matter of your sheet mulching is going to be up high too. It's going to be.
What I'm saying is if you put layers on top of your lawn, if
Yes.
the thatch is higher than the concrete, won't it just roll over or fall off the sides?
Well, one of the things that we talked about was sod cutting, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be sod cutting, but you could mow that down as low as possible, or get some of that edging done. I mean, if you put the cardboard and the soil on top next to your concrete, it is going to slough off onto the concrete. So you need to address that edge, whether it's thatch or something else. Even if you've got it a couple inches down, your goal is going to be, 6, 8 to 12 inches high. So it's going to need to feather down a little bit next to those edges anyway. And that's where you might get some additional weeds. So, yes?
If you want to put wood chips or gravel or something like that, would you still need to remove the lawn, or can you just put it on top of it?
If you want to put gravel down, you probably want to do something to get rid of the lawn, because the gravel is not going to have that same opportunity of screening out the light and air on the turf. So you're going to end up with having to redo it if you just put gravel on top of your lawn. The benefit of sheet mulching is to create soil, not to have a different surface material on top. So you'd need to do something different probably.
How about the wood chips? Same?
Well, with wood chips, what that is an organic material. So those are going to decompose along with the cardboard and the other materials that you're putting on top. So that's exactly what my mom did. And I'm going to get to some of those pictures where she didn't do any planting in her yard. She just she would not have had to have gotten rid of the sod, but she chose to do that by cutting it, turning it over in place, and then putting the cardboard on top of that and the mulch on top of that. And she feathered out near her driveway so that it mounded up a little bit, and the lawn has not come back at all. So if mulch is what you want and you don't ever want to plant in it, that's an opportunity to do sheet mulching. If you want to plant in it, that's also an opportunity. Yeah.
What kind of mulch do you use?
Well, I personally prefer shredded bark mulch because it binds together as compared to like the small or medium or large bark that when you use that, it tends, when it does get wet, either from irrigation or rain, it floats away. It doesn't stay in one place. And I really like the kind of look of the bark mulch that I showed in the earlier picture, where it sort of binds together and stays in one place. So any kind of shredded mulch. And you can go to the nursery or to ACE and take a look at the different ones that they have.